We gotta have the budget. We're out first.
Where's the agenda?
We're doing the water proposal first, and then we're gonna go right to agenda review.
I didn't bring my iPad. Guess I don't need it.
I never use mine other than to drill down a little bit more, but I've only got a couple things I want to talk about tonight anyway on this. Hi. Okay. Yeah. It's kind of early and still hard to commit to something for November 3rd and August. He's pretty thorough. I know she's like asking, I'm gonna put her off a little bit longer. I just don't want to commit.
Who do they have in jail?
Is he in Winter Haven or? Is it?
Sunday on the 20th.
Yeah.
But so they just want me to come and watch the show or be part of the show? Taping me doing what though? Am I gonna speak Spanish or what am I doing? Yeah, try to find out a little more detail. If she just wants me to sit in the audience, that's one thing. If she wants me to actually participate, you gotta write a speech again and practice it.
Okay.
I don't know what she.
Good. But she got more details in there, but no, she doesn't say
Process right now. The details.
You should. These are the. And I would imagine. Great appreciation. So we probably want to, there it is, want to put that in, just want to make sure I get what I want. I think we will be able to, because it's. You guys ready?
Do that.
Kind of deep.
Thank you.
It's got a deep tone to it.
Yeah, much deeper.
New gavel?
Yeah, new gavel.
Okay.
Somebody made this for us at the wood making
Very nice.
club over off the church there, Methodist Church, Episcopal Church. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Call this meeting to order. Today is August the 8th, and we're going to have a budget workshop on Winter Haven Water at this point. So I'll turn it over to our city manager, T. Michael, to kick things off.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. Appreciate the opportunity to continue our discussion on budget-related items. Want to go back just a little bit to when we presented the budget in July. Specifically, we had talked about the utility services budget and had included within the total revenues for all of our funds $70.2 million for our utility operations, and that was based upon our calculation of revenues to be received in fiscal year 2024. I say that just in precursor because as we go through the utilities budget this evening, which Department Director Gary Hubbard will present, you'll notice that the total budget that will appear is going to be higher than that because we are using some fund equity, some fund balance within the utility services fund because of the volume of their projects. So if you go back and you're looking at your budget notes down the road and see, well, why is this one 86 million and the previous one was 70 million? They are using $16.6 million worth of reserve funds towards projects. So in general, our goal tonight is just to give you an update on the utility operations. Their budget is included in the budget, the tentative budget that we have presented thus far. This is more so to give you some insights and understanding on the projects that they have planned Some of these are projects that have been in the hopper for a while. Some of these are projects that will be kicking off and will remain within our budget for a few years during the construction process. But it will give you an idea of what is on the horizon and what we're doing to meet the repair and maintenance aspects of our existing system and expand it to meet our growth in the area as well. With that, I'm going to ask Gary to come up and take us through this presentation, and we will answer questions, and I'll offer additional comments as we go forward.
Gary,
Thank you.
would you prefer us to ask questions as you go or kind of wait?
I was going to
Pause.
suggest that, feel free to stop me at any point
Okay.
and ask questions. I think that probably be the easiest way. But good evening, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners. As City Manager was saying, am I standing too close to this?
Yeah, just sort of push it up a little bit.
Yeah. Sounds pretty loud. Here tonight to talk about the utility budget and where we're headed in the future. Let's see. Where do I have to point this? Towards the screen. Okay. So just some highlights from the budget. As every year we have the annual increase of 2.5% that's effective May 1st of each year. So that is included in this budget. We anticipate that revenues are going to increase on our rate revenue is going to increase about $1.3 million during the fiscal year to about $30.6 million. During the coming year, we will be working on the WIFIA loan application. We anticipate that will be submitted at the end of November this calendar year, with probably execution of that loan sometime in the summer of 24, with disbursements possibly beginning in FY 25. Part of our budget, of course, addresses renewal and replacement of our assets. We've budgeted $8.7 million for that activity. There's roughly about $18 million budgeted for one water projects, and that's primarily the Bradco Farms project. The remainder of the CIP is estimated at $43.2 million. Also included in the budget is a 2.5% step program for our employees, and of course the cost of living adjustment that city manager has recommended.
One comment on that, if I could, Mayor and Commissioners, just to remind you, we are still in negotiations with our 3 collective bargaining units, the FOPE being one of those. So that pertains to cost of living. So all that still has to be settled out, but that number is in there as a placeholder for us for budgetary purposes.
So we have asked for 4 new positions this coming year, which would give us a total of 123 full-time positions and 4 part-time.
Did you say 100? Oh, 100. Okay, I got it. Sorry.
That's not on the one water project. So that's budgeting in the acquisition of that land.
That is correct. That's included in that number.
Gotcha.
It also includes, Commissioner Yates, some efforts towards the wetland development within that site. We have some funds that are set aside already in the budget for land acquisition, and we have factored in some debt service to actually acquire the land. That's one of the pieces within the budget. But when you look at the 17.9, almost 18 million, it's not just Bradco, although the bulk of it is with acquisition and initial development.
Correct. And also, we have that $2 million grant from Pepsi to help with drilling the recharge well there also. So that's part of that project. So I think, need to talk a little bit about our connection fees. We did a rate study a couple years ago where we increased our user rates. And we also took a look at our connection fees, but I wanted to give you a comparison of how we look compared to our neighbors. And on this chart, you'll see that the water connection fee is in light blue and then the sewer in yellow. And you can see that Winter Haven is roughly right in the middle of all of our neighboring utilities. Kind of on the low side on the water. But of course, that's going to have to change in the future when we go to the AWS system for Polk Regional Water Cooperative. And you can see Lake Alfred has already increased their connection fees substantially. And that's mostly due to the PRWC project, that $6,300 for their water connection fee. So I anticipate that we'll be in that range too at some point in the future.
One of the
Gary,
things.
is this for city property as well as non-city property, same connection fees, or in other words, are we going to connect with somebody that's not in the city limits?
Yes, we will have customers that are in the unincorporated Polk County. They're in our service area.
I know we charge a 25% upcharge on the water. Do we do the same thing on connection fees, or is it the same for residents and non-residents?
We do not use a upcharge for our outside of the city customers on connection fees.
Well, that might be something you want to consider if you're looking to raise things.
Yeah.
Because
One of the things, Mr. Mayor, that we've suggested internally is at some point in 2024, I don't know if it'll be within the fiscal year 24 or the calendar year 24, but doing a study on connection fees specifically as we look at AWS coming in through the PRWC efforts, the impacts that we're going to have with the wastewater treatment plant 3 expansions, to really look at this, water sewer connection fee and where does it need to be going forward.
Right.
Well, I think that's great. I'm just saying if we're willing to charge them an upcharge on the monthly service, we should be able to do it on the connection fees as well.
Right.
And if I know this, I think I know the answer to this, but clearly if they're paying us these connection fees, they don't pay anything to the county. It's not like taxes where they got to pay both.
That's
It's
correct.
either us or them. Okay.
That's correct.
And if we're selling them the water and the sewer, we get the connection fees.
That is correct.
Okay.
Any other questions on the connection fees?
Yeah, so we're not factoring in any increase this coming year on these impact fees.
No, as city manager suggested, we're going to do a study. We'll look at it, what we need to do with our connection fees and our user rates to make sure that we're prepared for the work that's ahead of us. That's the PRWC and of course our wastewater treatment plant.
So I guess my thought would just be, I mean, the growth is happening now. So by the time we do a study and we roll around, if the growth slows down, all of our infrastructure will be impacted on the current growth, but we're not getting the potential market rate that we should be getting on the current growth.
It's a timing issue in reality. I mean, I don't disagree with what you're saying. It's if you increase the cost when the demand is low, you've missed the sweet spot for, securing the revenues from that. I think at the same time, it's understanding what the costs are because your connection fees are tied back to what needs to happen within your system as far as the growth and expansion of it. So having a firmer understanding of what those pieces are is, the closer you can be to knowing that hard number. Okay, this is what we need to be bringing into, this is the procurement that we have ahead of us. It's just a balance of those two things. And I think that certainly we don't anticipate a sudden halt to development in our area. I mean, ideally would have done this, 5-6 years ago with a crystal ball to say this is where we're going to be and what our needs are going to be in 2023, 24. But I think that being able to do a rate study for connection fees in 2024 will position us to make a good decision on what that should be. The rate analysis folks will have a little more data to build that off of.
And also, we did do a study, if you may recall, in late 21, and we adopted the ordinance in January of 2022 that implemented in May of 2022 the current rate. So, I mean, we're really not behind the 8 ball in that sense. I think we're also probably a little bit better equipped to maybe help facilitate or expedite that process in terms of ordinance enactment and study compilation, et cetera. So I think it, as the city manager said, it's valid points, but I think we're prepared to move forward much quicker than we have in the past.
So just yesterday, I was meeting with PRWC and their funding group. And one of the topics was on connection fees, and they're really not going to have their guaranteed maximum price, their initial guaranteed maximum price until next spring sometime. So we won't know. We've got a rough idea based on the engineering estimates, but they're engineering estimates. They're not a price from the contractor. So I think we're going to be in the right time frame to get a good solid number where we need to be in the future.
I guess I would just look at it from the standpoint, I think a more staggered approach of increase is potentially more appropriate than take it from 6,000 to 12,000 overnight. And I'm not suggesting that that's going to occur, but I think just staggering it over time, because you're again, the growth is happening now, nothing's slowing that down. Many residents reach out, at least to me, to say, hey, why don't you raise impact fees? That slows the growth down. And I'm not suggesting to raise the impact fees specifically to slow the growth. I'm suggesting raising these fees now because of the tens of millions of dollars that we're going to need to spend in the next few years to prepare our infrastructure for the growth that's happening now.
So we have some limitations from the state statute, and city attorney might want to address this, but if we increase our connection fees more than 25%, I think, isn't that correct, John? And
Yeah,
at one time, we cannot raise them again for another 4 years.
if you may recall, in January of 2022, we had a study prepared, late 21, and there were some extraordinary circumstances that we were experiencing, and frankly, probably still are.
Mhm.
And there's a carve out in the statute that allows you to raise them beyond the limitations in the statute, which we did. You may recall we had 2 workshops where we discussed it, and then the fallback position, yeah,
It's right here, January 2022. It's still,
that's
I
correct.
keep it right here.
And there's a fallback position is the statute that's the Impact Fee Act 163.31801. It carves out or accepts sewer and water connection fees from its effect. So we had an abundance of caution go through the hoops so that in the event a court were to find that they are impact fees, we've gone through the hoops. So I think there probably are circumstances that we could demonstrate if the facts support it.
Well, and I'm not suggesting a 25% increase either, but if we 15 to 20%, then we're still under those those
Mhm.
state limits. And
Yep.
and again, we're preparing for the immediate future that's upon us and our infrastructure needs.
And I suspect, I'm no rate specialist, but I suspect that perhaps your rate recommendations will be maybe within those parameters. I don't know.
Right.
Well, that's
And
the answer.
that's something we can evaluate and come back to you before the completion of a study, I think.
When will the study be complete?
We're thinking summer of next year.
About a whole year. And I concur with Commissioner Yates. He made some really good points. Stagger it, but let's go ahead and start staggering. Even if it's 5-7%, we know we're going to raise more than that. Depending on the rate study, we just do it over a 3-year period, for example. This rate study will tell us the maximum we might charge, but
We can look at that and come back with a recommendation for commission to consider.
Got to have a study though, I think, in order to raise them legislatively. So got to have a study in my mind before you all take the action, or I would recommend.
we had a study recently. We're talking about a study we would need a study to know how high we would go, but we know we have some flexibility.
Well, we pretty much went as high, I believe, as that study suggested. So
We did.
we would need to have an additional study for new rates.
Sometimes you have to have a rational nexus for all
Oh, yeah.
these increases.
And that's the empirical data, the evidence for our local data that allows you to then legislatively do what you're talking about. So we would need to have that study as part of the evidence, as part of the support for you to validly and adopt an ordinance that I could defend.
Okay, so if all of a sudden something really happened and we wanted to cut rates, we can cut them without a study. We just can't raise them without a study.
That's correct.
And you don't have to take if the study recommends a certain level within that, you can also set below what that top level is.
I expect that's what we'd do most likely, and we would probably phase it in, like what you're saying. But I don't know why we couldn't go ahead and start now. But clearly we can't, according to our attorney.
Pardon me?
Never mind.
Oh, yeah, no, it's my recommendation that you not do it without a study.
I know, I heard you. Okay. That's what I was saying.
How much does the study cost again?
The last one we prepared was $75,000.
And that's not something you can do in-house, just go off, call everybody and come up with a.
Well,
graph.
we really like to, we use Raftellus. They've been doing the city rates for years and years. They're also doing, they did Auburndale's, they're working on Lakelands, they're working on
They've done PRWC.
PRWCs.
Also,
So could the study, when we do this next one, could the study project future needs so that you don't have to go back and get a study every time?
We can project out, we're using a funding model to help us project cost. But when we take official action, we'd like to have the backing of a consultant to document those changes.
I would say probably 5-year intervals would be probably the max you probably want to go.
And the
without
last
having-
study didn't include any kind of potential future needs to.
It did.
That
As
would
I
allow for us to have some flexibility. It is, I hate having our hands tied up here by state rule that makes no sense.
That's a whole different topic.
Well,
yeah,
and we always, butt into that, but
Yes, we
it's a
do.
fact. I mean.
Yeah.
That's we're getting back to home rule. So,
It's not only the state law, but it's also the decisional court law, case law that's been decided by the courts in the state of Florida that.
but it's unprecedented growth and we've got to do something to keep up with that growth.
Right.
But we have to do a study to do that. So.
Which is
But-
one of the extraordinary circumstances in our study, which allows us to raise the rates more than 25%. Yeah, it's a circle.
it's also based, you have to, when you're projecting, you have to project on needs and population. And then if that doesn't happen, because it's futuristic, if it doesn't happen, then you have to lower rates at some point in time too. So that's what the study tells you, the population studies. Everybody around here pretty much has had a population study within the past year or so. Lake Alfred, Haines City, Dundee, they're all doing their population studies right now and trying to project the needs, demands for water.
Our projections were based on the One Water Master Plan, which we sub-consulted with basically the Beaver folks to prepare the population projections for our service area.
I think some of the cities use about 5. They use Swift Muds, Beaver. They use Central Florida, CWFI. They use all of their, and they kind of consolidate those, and then they use whoever the city or whatever their demands. We have our own demands based on what we see, and they kind of mush them all together and throw it in the air and say, this is it. So,
Okay, so we'll head down that course of, looking at our fees this coming year. Looking at our user rates. Again, this is a comparison to our neighbors, and you can see we're really on the low end here. This is for a 5,000 gallon per month single family customer. This was done pretty much intentionally in the last rate study, was to keep our rates low for our residential customers. You can see that the water rate is, I think it's the third lowest in the county. But what's really interesting, I think, about this, you know, the 5,000 gallons, although that's our average for the system, that's skewed somewhat in that we have a lot of customers that are irrigating their lawns, but don't have an irrigation meter. So the actual average is probably closer to the 4,000 range per month. But that's something I think when we go to the study that we'll want to consider is how we handle our residential customers. And this next slide, I think will explain it a little bit more. What I did here was I compared our rates to our neighbors based on the 1,000 gallons per month for a family. And you can see at 2,000 gallons per month, we're actually the lowest in the county. Same thing at 3,000. 4,000, we're about equivalent, I think, with Bartow. I think we're slightly above Bartow. And then at 5,000, you know, no, I'm sorry, at 5,000, we're just a little bit above Bartow. But this was designed specifically in this manner. And when we did the last rate study, is I didn't want to penalize our retired folks or our low income families, because those folks normally use in the 2, 3, and 4,000 gallon range per month. So I think in the next time we do a rate study, we'll want to look at from that range of 5,000 a month on up and have a steeper incline on that rate so that, you know, we begin collecting revenue and try to encourage conservation. That's what we really need to do, is because the more water we can save, the less water we're going to have to purchase in the future. So it will make sense. And that's one of the things we'll evaluate when we do the next rate study. Any questions? So getting into the actual budget itself, this is the revenues. You can see that the debt proceeds is the largest portion. That's about 27% of the budget. This will be SRF monies in here and bank loan for purchasing the Bradco property, and of course our existing debt also. Water service fees about 20%. Our sewer is about 15.5%, and using reserves also at about 20% of the budget also. That's at $16.6 million the city manager was talking about to balance the budget. Then, you know, our water and sewer connection fees that make up about 6% of the budget. Miscellaneous revenue 6%. Grants. This is confirmed grants, and we think that number is probably going to go up, but we didn't want to put that into the budget. We wanted to be conservative, but that's at about 5%. Any questions?
I got a question. This might be a question more for CJ. How are we showing debt proceeds as revenue? Is that because this is the year we're going to actually bring in money from a debt, from a bond issue or something? But we can still show that as a credit, even though it's a debit.
And then we show that in the expenditure.
So the two will negate when on the next page.
Well, that'll be the debt over time, so a portion of the debt will be.
So every year okay, I see what you're saying. But next year, this 23 million will drop off on our revenues. This is a one-time deal.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. So on the expenditure side, you can see that the bulk of our budget is in capital at roughly 50% of the budget, operating at 25%. Our personnel at about 11%. Our annual debt services, 4.5%. Contributions to the general fund and so on. The non-departmental, that's primarily interdepartmental transfers. Any questions? This is a summary of the utility fund itself with beginning revenues and ending revenues for the coming budget year, considering the revenues that we just discussed and the expenditures, also giving you a ending balance of the cash fund at the end of the budget year at $22.7 million. Again, you see $16.6 million of reserves that are used. This kind of just gives you a feel by our operating divisions within utilities. And I'm going to kind of lump a couple of these together, but wastewater collection and our water treatment, if you look at those, that's about 35% of our budget. On the water supply side and water distribution, that's about 20%. If you look at just kind of round numbers. I think another thing that's interesting in this is, our customer service. If you look at that, that's about 2%, a little bit less than 2% of our budget, but that division of utilities just does a tremendous job for the city, not just the utility, but the city as a whole, responding to our customers. So it's a huge investment, for our customer base, but I think that's one of the areas where we really shine is in our customer service area. I'm not going to spend a lot of time if you have questions, but this is the breakdown by each division of the personnel, operating and capital that's budgeted for the coming year. I'll just give you a minute here to kind of go through these and see if you have any questions. I don't see anything that jumps out.
Offer just a comment on this as you look through these, even after the fact, that when you see increases in personnel, well, that ties back to where I've recommended a COLA adjustment for our workforce, as well as the step adjustment that's in there. You can see the impact that has. And then the other place you'll see the most increase is going to be within capital. And that's going to be project specific within the various cost centers.
Yeah. One area that's one of the divisions is reclaimed water. And that's pretty much been primarily just capital throughout the years. At some point in the future, we'll probably have to expand this division with personnel also, but that's probably a few years down the road.
What page are you on? Are you on 14 yet?
I am on 13 right now,
13, okay.
But we can go to 14.
but we can go to 14.
Well, okay.
So these are just some significant items. And Mr. Mayor, you got a question?
Well, just the South Lake Howard sewer replacement. I know we're getting ready to talk about South Lake Howard in our agenda review. And that has nothing to do with more sidewalks. That's strictly sewer replacement, or does that include sidewalks?
That's
as
a
well?
project that we brought to you. Todd Gooding had presented on that probably a month or so ago.
Right.
About some utility line replacements that is separate from our sidewalk improvement programs that are on your agenda this evening.
But we will clearly put dark fiber there because we're digging once and we're doing that right, or is that going to be under the
We
sidewalk?
still do that everywhere we go. If we're going to put a pipe in the ground and there's not existing fiber, there will be a conduit with it.
And the sidewalk is what we're going to talk about at our agenda review.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I thought our contribution to the PRWC was more than this projected,
What page you on that?
14.
Oh, okay. Didn't see that. Sorry.
I believe that's correct for this coming year, and it's steadily going to increase, but we can check those numbers. I'm pretty sure that's correct.
Okay.
So I think it's
Because
probably,
we got projections
yes,
that go beyond this next year.
we have projections all the way through 2032.
And so when we do the, I guess all of that would have to be figured into the rate study.
Yes, sir, that is correct. We're still working through those numbers, that business plan
Yes,
that's been presented, that's gonna change again once we get the guaranteed maximum price. That business plan will change.
okay.
Gary, where do we take the sludge? Where does that go now?
That goes to the landfill as cover material.
Like in just a Bartow?
Um, over on off 540.
Lakeland, I mean, Lakeland?
Yeah.
So that goes on the top of the trash is,
Yeah, they use it as cover.
Huh.
You'll see that the majority of this list is R&R type projects. There are some, operational, like the sludge removal and hauling, that's more operational. Smart covers, that's our initiative to protect our lakes and make sure that we limit the amount of sewer overflows throughout the year. And those have worked very well for us. The other small one down there at the bottom, and that's that recently this was approved by City Commission back probably 4 months ago, maybe. But is operational now, and tax collector is processing all of our checks at this time. Any other questions? This is a review of the new positions. City manager did go through some of this during the normal budget presentation. But very quickly, we're proposing to add a new inspector for construction. And that's just because of the amount of activity we're seeing in new home builds. Water conservation specialist, pre-treatment and fog coordinator. With all the new businesses being added in the city, that's just another area where we have to monitor, especially restaurants and car washes and those types of things. And then another billing assistant clerk. Any questions? So this, back to the capital side of it, this kind of gives you a feel where the money is being spent by the various divisions of the utilities. You can see that primarily in engineering, that's most of the design work and studies and all that's associated with actual construction of the different projects. And then you're seeing in each one of the divisions, the money that's being allocated this coming year. Wastewater collection, a substantial amount, water treatment, that's mostly associated with the Pollard Road facility and the new Cypress Wood. Nothing really jumps out at me here. This is the 5-year lookout. And this would be what the rate study would be looking at, would be the 5-year lookout. And you can see here, this is just the water treatment plant division, proposing that during that total 5-year time frame, about $43 million in expenditures. The two big projects are the Pollard Road, Cypress Wood, and then the many interconnects that we're proposing between our neighboring utilities. Also, there's quite a bit of improvement for our Inwood water treatment plant. It really needs some improvements, so there's monies allocated to that.
What's the Fairfax WTP? What is that antenna replacement?
So that's we have an antenna there that provides all the communication for our SCADA systems, and that's just replacement of that antenna.
Gary, what does exactly does interconnect mean? I mean, I know what the word means, but like Dundee and Ainsley, are we just connecting with our cities in case of emergency of some sort?
Some of them are for emergency conditions. Like we completed one this year for Polk County over on 540. But some of these are for wheeling water and providing service for temporary time. For example, Haines City, a couple of months ago, we executed an agreement to provide them temporary water service. Same thing with Town of Dundee. I believe we did that last year. So some of these are emergency interconnects and some of them are for wheeling water. As part of the PRWC plan, we will be wheeling water to Lake Alfred and to Auburndale.
I assume that Lake Alfred and Auburndale are paying their fair share, right? It's not just all on us.
That's correct.
Okay.
That interconnect, where's that interconnect for us with Polk County? Is that out?
That's already been installed. It's over on 540. There's
By Kings Road,
by Kings Road, yeah.
Rucker Highway, where it ties back over there. If you're going out to Winter Lake Road, you'll see it.
Oh, that's 540.
It's on Winter Lake Road right there where the Kings Landing area is past the intersection of Coleman Road, I think it is.
Oh, okay.
That's Record Highway. That's not.
Record Highway, yeah.
Record, yeah.
There is another interconnect proposed for Auburndale that might serve Polk County also. Those discussions are still ongoing.
So there will be no interconnect with Lakeland.
No, sir, there will not be an interconnect.
So
with
that's
Lakeland.
we just doing that out of the goodness of our hearts, participating.
Well, no, I think, from a resiliency standpoint, that our interconnects with our neighbor will ensure that we have long-term water supplies if we were ever to lose a portion of our system. We would want to have those interconnects, just like our neighboring utilities would like to have our interconnects.
No, I'm talking about with Lakeland,
You're talking about the West Polk.
West Polk.
No, we.
And that's what I said, out the goodness of our hearts that we participate.
Well, we probably will change that in the future. I think that 100,000 gallons that we participated in the West Polk, we'll probably end up swapping with Lakeland in the future and get that 100,000 gallons back. If that makes sense.
How could you do that, Gary?
Well,
That's a discussion for another day. I
Yeah.
won't prolong this.
Yeah, but I think that's probably what will happen.
All right.
Then on wastewater plant 2, we're not proposing a lot of work at this facility. The work that you do see is about the decommissioning of the facility itself. So that wastewater flow will go to plant 3. Wastewater treatment, this is the big one. This is the big plant expansion that's planned out in the next 5 years. That's the primary driver for the WIFIA loan. Water distribution, Lake Elbert. This is associated with the current project to replace the utilities around this area. That's an R&R type project. Wastewater collection, the new Harmony master lift station. That station will take a portion of the load that currently goes to the Chain of Lakes master will come to this new station, and that'll free up capacity in the Chain of Lakes station to take flow from plant 2. Septic to sewer, we have quite substantial grant funding associated with these projects, and we expect more and more grant funding. Lift station replacement, as you know, we have over 200 lift stations. So this is an ongoing effort to keep our lift stations up to par. And I believe this number probably will go down in the future. Staff is getting more and more proficient at working on our lift stations. And I think we'll probably do a lot of this in-house in the future. But for the current time, we're budgeting for it. Reclaimed water, many of this in this category is completion of the transmission system around the city. That's that 30-mile loop that goes kind of along the same line as the Sapphire Necklace. And that's to be able to move water wherever we want to in the future. Also their ASR well field construction. That could be part of the Bradco project. That hasn't been defined yet. Rib construction, that's up at the Tilden Grove area. And then the direct potable reuse, that's more of a pilot type program that we're going through and looking to demonstrate how we can create potable water in the future from our reclaimed water. Any questions? So the major capital projects, of course, the big one is the wastewater treatment facility. One water projects, our water plants at Inwood, Cypress Wood, Pollard Road. A new utility complex. Our interconnects with our neighboring utilities, and then, of course, our septic to sewer program.
If I could just make a comment on this, Mayor and Commissioners. You know, you look at this is a 5-year capital investment of 273, almost $274 million. Keep in mind that those expenses associated with those projects are spread out for multiple years post these major improvements. I say that when you look at wastewater treatment plant 3 at $152 million. We built wastewater treatment plant in the 1970s and have operated it since, but that was a one-time slug of investment that was made at that point. This is the same scenario where we make a significant investment with our WIFIA dollars, and we're paying that out over the 30 years that follow that. And hopefully that plant, with today's construction technologies and methodologies, will be much longer than a 50-year plant and be built to a capacity that can handle the growth that we would expect to see in that same window.
Right. Actual financing is a 35 years, so that does help us.
I say that because when I look at that number, I have no shame in saying it scares me to think that we're going to spend that much money over a 2 or 3 year period to build something, but then recognizing that the financing that we have through the federal government will allow us to pay that back over a much longer window at a very preferred interest rate.
Thank you.
So Gary, what will happen to the decommissioned Fairfax plant?
There are upgrades planned to Fairfax in the years to come. That's primarily to bring that facility up to current technology. That facility has been in operations, I think, since the 50s. So there is work planned for Fairfax.
So immediately you'll be decommissioning it. Isn't that what you said?
No, that's plant 2.
That's the wastewater treatment plant by motor pool.
Not at by motor pool, not at Fairfax.
Yes, sir. At motor pool. I'm sorry. Any other questions? So again, this is just kind of give you a feel for where our treatment facilities are located and the work that's proposed for those.
One of the things that we've been trying to do for a number of years, commissioners, is to consolidate the location of our water treatment facilities. Again, this is our potable treatment, not our wastewater. And you heard Mr. Hubbard speak about the new water plants at Cypress Wood as well as at Pollard Road, which you see indicated with the red dots. In doing those, the Pollard Road would allow us to eliminate the Winterset Gardens water treatment plant, so that one would go away. And the Cypress Wood plant is intended to replace the Winterset, the Garden Grove East, and the existing Cypress Wood plant. So we go 2 new ones coming online, 4 old ones going offline.
Right.
And so what happens to that land? Like, I mean, is it like you can't do anything on that land for 100 years because you had a wastewater treatment plant on it?
It's a water treatment, not a
These are water
wastewater.
treatment plants.
Or I mean, you know what I mean? Because you used it for a water treatment plant, you can't do anything.
Would you
else.
use those for monitoring wells? Or?
We would probably retain at least one of the wells at each location for monitoring purposes. But other than that, the property could be used for other means.
Give you an example, the Winterset Gardens, if you've driven Thompson Nursery Road, you know, that's a relatively small site. I mean, it's bigger than some, but you know, there's probably some opportunity to do something there, but we've also given up some of that land already to Thompson Nursery Road realignment. The Garden Grove East, if I'm not mistaken, that's at the end of Byron Court. There's a very small parcel of land that you really wouldn't do anything else with. In the Cypress Wood, again, a relatively small area within the Cypress Wood community that I don't know is going to have much use beyond that, Commissioner Yates.
What about the Winterset plant? What is it? When are you?
Winterset plant, you know, that we've been talking about that. There's a ton of growth that's happening right there right now. That plant is set back off the road, kind of in a flag lot. And I think we need to explore what our opportunities would be with that. We have the old Fire Station 3 portable building that we're working to get a contractor to remove that at this time. But I think we just need to explore what the option is.
There probably are some options for a couple of these properties, and I'm sure we'll evaluate what is the best use of the property at that time. So you'll notice that I'm going to switch from calling wastewater plant 3. It's going to be called a new water recycling facility. And there is a reason for this, is in that this facility will handle basically a number of different types of water, one of them being our wastewater, but it will likely handle storm water. It will likely handle surface water, possibly from Peace Creek. So this is going to be basically a one water campus. This is also situated where Pollard Road, the new Pollard Road water plant is. So this will become the city's one water campus, basically, and this will be the water recycling facility that's associated with it.
Are you tied to recycling? Could you use water resources plant, water recovery plant?
I'm
something?
open to suggestions. I've been around the world on what this should be called. It could be a water resources facility. So yeah, I think there's
Since you got stormwater, you have all different water.
right,
So
because we plan to take water off ILC. Just off the west side, we're estimating about 600,000 gallons per day on the average, just rainfall off that west side of the ILC. And that's water that we need to take advantage of. So at this facility, there will also be aquifer storage and recovery systems, and there likely will be aquifer recharge wells in the upper Florida at this location also. That's just all part of our planning for the future.
But the wastewater is going to be redirected there. Is that a part of it will flow through that
It'll be,
sapphire necklace thing that you talked about earlier?
yes. So basically, this facility will create reclaimed water, and that, you know, some of the budget is to have that transmission system, that 30-mile loop around the city,
Right.
created where we can move reclaimed water for wetland restorations or for ribs or other recharge type projects. So the long-term plan is store as much water as we can, because when we are going to have periods of drought, and when those periods occur, the idea is to have that water stored underground so that we can use that water to maintain lake levels and make sure that we have enough water supply for our citizens. So it's just,
But Gary, what you're talking about is that's real distant as far as treating it where it could be reused for potable water. I mean,
that is part of the plan also.
but I'm just saying that's projection 10 years down the road.
So we're projecting the first direct potable reuse facility in 2045.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So it's 20 years down the road.
Yeah.
You know, this plan is a 50-year plan, and over a 50-year cycle, we estimate that we'll be able to store in excess of 70 billion gallons. That make sure that during those drought times, we have water available. That's really the key. We would not be the chain of Lake City if the chain doesn't exist. So
Like it did for a brief period.
That's right. And we don't want that to occur again in the future. So this is all about making sure that our lakes are sustainable and long into the future and that we meet the needs of the citizens. Any other questions?
I just have a question. I know that wastewater treatment plant 3 used to be close to 8 million gallons. Facility,
7.5 million
7.5.
gallons. Mhm.
And I see this one's 8.65.
The first facility will likely be 10 or 12 million gallons
Okay.
per day. My thought is that, you know, our water demands projected for the next 50 years put us right around 20 million gallons per day over the next 50-year period. And I'm thinking, you know, if we build this in 5 million gallon increments or 6 million gallon increments, that'll serve us well into the future.
Okay.
Any other questions? Again, we've been talking about the Sapphire Necklace some here this evening and the first project, which is the Beradco Farms project. I think the key, this project is so significant in that this will be the first example, what I call the first gem of the Sapphire Necklace. So this is critical to, I think, our future and showing that this is the way of the future for not only the city of Winter Haven, much of Central Florida, possibly the entire state, possibly the entire United States. But this concept really is about quality of life, providing the general public won't see the infrastructure that's associated with the utilities. What they'll see is the nature parks with, you know, all the wildlife that it attracts, the trail systems. That's what's the general public's going to see. And that's, I think, what's really driving this. We will have some flood protection benefits from the program. But again, the general public won't really see that. What they'll see is that nature park and the trail systems and all of that.
I thought this property was more of a box. I don't remember it.
It is, but the portion that we're going to purchase is more of that U shape.
So what would happen? So the U shape plus the other red box there?
Yeah, both of those areas are somewhat wet. Our wetland surveys should be complete here within the next couple of weeks. Well, actually, the entire property is about 570 acres, and we're proposing to purchase about 370.
So what would potentially happen with that unpurchased portion?
The developer will retain that for future development. And that's primarily high ground, which is current orchards.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I thought we were buying the whole box. I didn't think we were leaving a piece out that could be developed I thought the salt enemy nature part.
No, it's always been proposed as purchasing just the ditched and drain wetland portions. Part of the Sapphire Necklace program is to change the way that we handle development in the future. We want to encourage developers to take advantage of areas that have been ditched and drained, and in return for that, higher densities in those in the highland areas.
Have we got a contract with the seller?
We have a proposed purchase and sale agreement. It's in review at this time. All of our due diligence works are in the process. So we're planning for a closing later this year.
Do you have to have an appraisal?
Yes, we do have appraisals, two different appraisals.
Is there any idea how much that carved out portion would potentially cost?
We have we've come to somewhat of a verbal.
Not the red part, the part that
The Highlands.
higher
Talking about all this, all this in here.
Yeah, well, that's part of the appraisal. The entire property was appraised, the entire 570 acres.
I guess my concern is that, I mean, we're gonna take the property that's very difficult to probably build on, if you could build on it at all, and use it for the Sapphire Necklace, which is good, and trails and nature park, which is good. But that portion is gonna be retained by the developer, who can then go in and build condos or single family homes or multifamily housing and disrupt the ecosystem that we're trying to build here in this area.
No,
And make a pretty penny off of it because of what we're gonna do to this. I mean, who wouldn't want to buy that piece? Because nothing's ever gonna be built behind you, because you've acquired it for the Sapphire Necklace.
well, the entire time, the development of the Sapphire Necklace is to make sure that we protect those areas that, are sensitive, but still allow development to occur. I don't think we're going to be able to stop development, but what we want to do is we want to encourage development the best way that we can. So I think that's the objectives of,
I'm not proposing to stop development, but I guess I am proposing it here. Because the development of it, I mean, it was gonna be the Circle B East, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, it is,
Commissioner Yates, if I could just offer a thought here, this is a 370 acre acquisition, 372, I think is the number. And, as Mr. Hubbard said, the intent has been acquire the environmentally sensitive lands, the historic wetlands, and try and restore those, knowing that people are going to develop next to it. And it's going to, and actually, it becomes a good model for the economic value of higher density on the uplands and trying to restore those areas. People will want to live on lands adjacent to these types of properties because you've got this great parkland next to you that becomes a conservation area. I'd want to live there. The benefit of acquiring that land and using it for the purposes that we have expressed, there's a couple of things that I think are paramount to that. One, the developer could go in and develop all that land. They could come in and have all the impacts to it and fully mitigate for those wetland impacts outside of Polk County at a mitigation bank elsewhere. And then we have wetlands that have been further altered with no return benefit back to our residents. And I think that would be a travesty. And we've seen that happen in other areas. In our case, these are the types of lands that what we need to do within our water and sewer operations with trying to recharge, keeping in mind that we get nothing in our area for water other than what falls from the sky. There's no water flowing in, there's no springs, there's no magical groundwater that's coming our way. Everything is moving away from us. So the ability to capture these lands and rehydrate them to the benefit of our water use permit is, in my opinion, a critical piece of our long-term strategy. I think if we wanted to acquire the rest of that land, that's a significant expense. And I don't know that if we would have a willing seller in that regard. I don't know that, I mean, we can certainly explore that if that's the commission's desire. But what we have been working towards thus far has been a small amount of uplands within which we can place a future utility services campus per se to free up the land that we have down on 6th Street. And then the balance of the land to preserve the green space and restore it back to where it has a much greater value to us.
Maybe when we're digging for water, we'll hit some oil out there. Work for Jed Clampett. What else, Gary?
Just very briefly, our renewal and replacement, and I kind of highlighted some of this earlier on. We have a lot of asbestos cement pipe in our system. 50 some miles, that's something we're gonna have to continue to address in the years to come. We're gonna have to replace that pipe. The same thing with the old clay gravity sewer system. We're gonna have to, over time, we're gonna have to continue to address those. And that was the reason in this budget, there's about almost $9 million to maintain our assets and replace assets a little bit at a time.
All right, commissioners, any other questions for Mr.
Any other
Hubbard or
questions?
staff? You got anything else, Gary? Are you done or? I think it's a good
I'm-
report.
I'm at your disposal to answer any questions you may have.
I think we've had a good discussion anyway. I'm not trying to rush us, but.
Well,
You got anything else?
Mayor, I just offered, again, this is factored into the tentative budget that we proposed to you. It doesn't have a bearing on millage. We talked about that when we brought the tentative budget forward, but there is a lot of capital within this. Gary and his team, I want to commend him and Mark and Todd. They work very hard on these capital projects, trying to identify what our needs are long-term and balance those investments with what we can actually accomplish financially within the year and what we can actually accomplish from a construction standpoint. There's a ton that's going to be happening within the water sewer infrastructure, not just here in Winter Haven, but I think we're going to see more and more of this everywhere across this state. As these systems hit 50, 60, 70 years old, you're going to see more and more investment heading in that direction. I think that what we're trying to do to consolidate water plants, we're trying to do to consolidate wastewater treatment plants is a long range strategy that will prove very beneficial to us financially. We understand the commission's comments with respect to connection fees and rate studies, and those things will occur in fiscal year 2024, and we will be bringing back more information for you in that regard.
All right, well, thank you, Gary. We're going to adjourn here for 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Take a washroom break and we'll be back in 5 minutes to start our agenda review.
Yes, sir.
So,
Thank you.
adjourned. Get your ticket. Okay. Good evening. I'd like to call this workshop to order. Today is the 8th of August. This is a regular city commission meeting agenda review for the meeting that'll be held next Monday on August 14th. If I get a roll call from city clerk, please.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Mercer,
Here,
Commissioner Yates,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Birdsong,
Here.
and Mayor Dancer.
Here. Okay, we've got two presentations that will be done Monday night. Minutes, comments from the audience. Anybody have any problems with the minutes? Ordinance second reading, we've been through both of these. Any questions or comments, commissioners, on the second reading public hearings? All right, on the consent agenda. T, why don't you just kind of go through them quickly? We'll stop you on the ones we want to talk
Sure.
about.
The first one, this is dealing with the maintenance of our ice machines, water fountains, refrigeration equipment. Typically, that's been part of our HVAC program. However, the contract we have with the HVAC provider, they're not doing that anymore. So we are recommending a procurement through our National Cooperative Purchasing Alliance on that. Very straightforward, just ongoing maintenance of our cooling systems. The design and build price guarantee for Lake Maud Phase 2. This is a project that you're very familiar with. We awarded this as a design build contract to Whitehead in June of 22. The design phase was $136,000. They have presented staff with a GMP for the build out of this site. The total price on that, including the 2.5% contingency, is $3.286 million. The funds are allocated and identified within your fact sheet, and this is to complete the Lake Maud project.
can I just ask a question about
Yes, sir.
this? Even if the construction, the rest of the construction couldn't start because what was they calling it? The fill or something that they put out there? Or
That's like Conine.
Lake Conine, you're right.
That's the one
I'm
where we
thinking
did the
Lake-
surcharge.
This is
Yeah.
Lake,
Yeah, this was, we needed to identify the additional funds to build out the second phase of the project. And so that's what we've been doing.
I'm just so anxious for that project to be completed.
We've got so many going on, Mayor Pro Tem, you can mix them up as much as you want.
And was that artificial turf or?
These are grass fields. These are grass fields.
Okay.
The third item is the Lake Albert Trail construction. It's Andy Palmer night here at City Commission Workshop Agenda. So this is finally 1.8 mile trail on the northeast and west sides of Lake Albert to tie in with the DOT's project. It also, the project involves major stormwater improvements for this lake, as well as utility improvements, as we talked about earlier in the budget presentation. There is fiber conduit that goes in. There is milling and resurfacing of the roadway. Total project at the end of the day is $10.619 million. Of that, 3.06 is in the trail items and pedestrian related items, roadway work, about 1.1 in stormwater. Utilities is about 5.2 million. Your fact sheet identifies where the funds are coming from on that. This is one of the projects for which we had earmarked or had recommended use of fund balance to fill the construction gap on it. And Cathcart Construction Company is the sole bidder on this project. That's also who is doing the Joyce B. Davis Park project in the downtown sidewalk cafes.
So T, the way this is going to work is Capcart is going to do the construction. We've hired Carter K to sort of be our project manager, so to speak,
Right.
or
They
engineer.
provide oversight project management for us.
And they'll work primarily with Andy and with you, or Andy and AJ, or
Yeah, we're gonna,
MJ.
AJ just got real nervous when you said AJ.
MJ, CJ.
But I'm all in favor of it.
Oh, we got a lot of J's.
They will work. So Andy will be really the point person on the trail aspects of it. Mark Bombard and the folks from utilities on their portion. Brittany Hart will be much involved in this, and MJ will provide some leadership as well.
But you're not going to have to do it. You're going to be able to kick your heels back, right? Like
I'm gonna be in a position to do the job that you guys want me to do and let them build the stuff.
That's good. That's what I wanted. It should be that way. You should not have to oversee this. You've got good people doing it, so.
Absolutely. And now that I've got AJ assigned to the project, I feel even better. But I'll probably have to pick up her slack.
Okay. Have we been pretty happy with what we're doing in Joyce B. Davis Park? Has that been?
You know, they're just getting underway. Andy, you want to comment on that? I mean, they tore up everything that's out there. They pruned the trees. It already looks better just with that, but
Just in the few weeks that they've been working, we actually had our construction coordination meeting today with Cathcart on the downtown projects. And they are also, and just for the record, they are also doing the South Lake Howard sewer replacement as well. And they've been very professional, very detail oriented. Wanted to make sure, especially with the downtown projects, that they have everything before they rip up streets and are able to go back. So we're very pleased with them so far.
Okay, good.
Would this project address the pump and pipe that goes from Elbert to Otis at all, or does that stay in place?
I'm going to ask Brittany to comment on that. I can tell you that I don't think it takes into account the pump piece itself, but it does address stormwater in the area, so that one of the big issues, it's not going to reduce the amount flowing into that lake, but it's going to treat it a lot more before it gets to the lake. That system that flows from Elbert to Otis, when that was designed in the 60s, it has an overflow portion to it, but the lake would have to rise almost to the level of the roadway itself in order for that to function. And we have, I know, explored tentatively what that would look like to put a permanent pump system in there, but I don't know if that's anything on the horizon. So I'll defer to Brittany.
No, it is not currently. We've been trying to look at historical levels of the lake and how that pop off, like T was explaining. We are looking at ideas of a pump possibly in the future, but it is not in this project.
Because we flipped it on during the storms last year.
Right.
Yeah, lake levels were extremely high at that moment, and we needed to pump it down, but historically we haven't needed to use that function. So we're trying to figure out how that looks in the next few years, how we pay for those pumps, because the pump will be quite expensive. But it's not put in as part of this project, but it's something we are exploring in future years.
It is the first time we've ever pumped that lake,
Yeah.
since that was put in the 60s. And to be honest with you,
We didn't know it was there.
we knew it was there, but we didn't know how it
We didn't know
worked.
how it worked.
And even once we got the pump working and saw that it's almost like a reverse well system in Lake Otis, how it comes up, it was the most bizarre thing we ever saw. So we know that if the lake rises, that using a pump system there is an alternate means to get that water down.
I guess my ultimate concern is that Elbert is somewhat of an impaired body of water, and water will improve once these improvements are done.
Exactly.
But my ultimate concern is to pump any more impaired water into a lake that's not impaired.
Yeah, that's a great point, Commissioner Yates. And I certainly, when you have greater stormwater treatment around the lake, the runoff from the roadways is going to be, you're going to benefit the lake in capturing that. I'll also say that when the lake is higher, you're going to get better treatment of the lake itself, because the littoral zones is really where all that treatment is happening. When lakes are low and you don't have that vegetation that's helping absorb and wash out those nutrients, that's when you run into bigger problems. But there's a delicate balance in there. The one last piece I want to just say on this, we expect this project to start construction late 2023. It's going to be really come down to procuring the materials. This is about a 16-month completion project, though. As you can imagine, with major utility work, road work, and the trail itself, it will take about 16 months.
But you think we will break ground this year?
That is the intent. Yes, sir.
Okay.
The next one is the use of some JAG grant dollars. This is for purchasing license plate reader equipment, $18,280. This is part of just one more tool in the toolbox of law enforcement. 10E, speaking of lake shores and wetlands, this is continuing contracts with 4 different firms that help us with the lake shore maintenance on public lands that we have. We have, I believe, somewhere around 100 different properties that we manage where roadways end at a lake, or we have a small parcel of land or a shoreline that we maintain. So we'll use those on. This is just a recommendation to award to these folks, and then we will negotiate contracts and issue work on a task order basis. The next item is a piggyback agreement with Guardian Community Resource Management out of Dade City, Florida. We had a very good discussion, and Diane Durr is here this evening. I'm glad to see Diane is with us tonight. We had a great discussion last meeting on the LHAP, the Local Housing Action Plan. And we talked about how in the past we use Keystone and Hands to help us with managing the disbursement and the qualifying of those folks that were going to participate in the SHIP program, getting them through the process, getting the money to them, working directly with them. Guardian is a company that does that work as well. And we have an opportunity to piggyback an existing agreement that they have with Martin County. So that is our recommendation, that we move forward with using them to help us manage the roughly $1 million that we have existing within the SHIP and the $613,000 that will be coming in this year.
So we got $1.6 million basically, is what it looks like.
Diana, you come to the podium if you would.
That's, I mean, I'm doing some rough math, $1 million plus 613, usually about that. $1.6 million.
The amount of money within the SHIP fund, including current year receipts.
Yes, so good evening.
Hi.
What we have in the funds right now, excluding funds for 23-24, which is the funds that would have started July 1st, and we have actually received our first installment on that 613,000. But in existing funds, we have over $1 million that has accumulated over prior years. So the goal is, of course, to be a little bit proactive so that next year we would not find ourselves in this predicament again. So we would like to piggyback on an agreement with Martin County to allow them to not only do down payment assistance, but to do the other strategies that we have in LHAP.
So clearly there's nobody local that can do this. This is a Martin County company.
Well, what we have done in prior years has been locally, but we still have $1 million on the books. And I think that one of the things that we need to look at is ever since I went back to 2017, we were using Keystone Challenge, which eventually turned over to Hands. We have been using that agency, which was local, for all those years. And for the majority of that time, what they did was down payment assistance.
Mhm.
We had 4 strategies that they could have utilized, but because they pretty much only did one strategy, it left all of the funds on the books right now. So what we are anticipating on doing is to contract with an agency that is able to do all 4 of the strategies.
Okay.
So we can actually do a couple of things in-house. We will not be relying on Guardian to do everything,
Right.
but the major things we would want to have outsourced.
And you feel comfortable with these folks? You've met them, you've checked their references and all that. You feel like they're good people? Or Eric's shaking his head, yes, okay.
So far as they have not only contracted with Martin County, but they have also worked with Osceola County, Putnam County, and they've also been one of the lead training agencies for like the state conventions, where they would have different consultants to come in and do presentations.
Right.
Guardian has always been one of the ones that would come and do presentations.
And what's a realistic expectation that we on a commission can hope to see over the next 12 months once we enter this agreement with them, what will we see tangible that we can put our fingers on that we're trying desperately to do up here? What will we see?
Okay,
Can you tell us?
So what I would anticipate is that Guardian, we have in the LHAP that you all approved a few weeks ago, we have rehab, owner occupied rehab at a maximum of $40,000. We have emergency repairs at 20,000, as well as disaster assistance at 20. That's aside from the down payment assistance, which starts from 20,000 up to $40,000. So we can anticipate on having at least $500,000 outsourced next year if we work proactively. Now, in-house, we would be doing projects such as roof replacement, plumbing, electrical, the 4 components of core inspections. So we will have HVAC, electrical, plumbing, and roof work. We could actually do that in-house with our procurement department. And we can anticipate on probably expending $300,000 there. And that will take a lot of the money off the book, especially as it relates to the prior year funds, because we do have expenditure deadlines. And just because we have 3 years to expend funds doesn't necessarily mean it should take us 3 years to do so.
Right. And I don't like to have this money laying around when there's so much of a need. That's what I'm trying to get to. I just want to see us using this money, whether it's you, because a lot of this is going to fall on you. I know that.
Well, I think that's my goal as well. And I think that's one of the reasons why we are trying to do with your approval, the things that we are doing at this point, recognizing that down payment assistance is not really benefiting the greatest need of the population for which these programs are designed. We're leaving out a whole segment of very low income households by strictly doing down payment assistance.
Do you, and this will be my last question, but do you anticipate, or is there a list of 20 people already that you can fill these needs and help them with their roofs or their air conditioners?
Yes, sir.
I can answer that question.
Yes,
So
sir.
why-
I've
we approve
referred
this.
over 20 people, so I can answer that.
I may run
question.
What I'm trying to get to is I want to take this low hanging fruit that's here and get some wins and get some people help. You know what I mean? Use this money.
Well, that's what I want to do as well.
Okay.
And I think that's one of the things that in consultation with the city manager and my director has been to let us look at what has not happened, which is why funds are still remaining on the books, and let us change the strategy, not necessarily change the strategies, but change the methodologies by wherewith we can get these funds expended. Because I don't think that Winter Haven or any other community should have funds remaining on the books when
Right.
you have so many needs out there.
Well, you've got a supportive commission that wants to see people's houses get fixed and get our homeless kids taken care of. So please do it.
I'll try my best.
One of the things, Mayor and Commissioners, going back to the LHAP, and Diane is very knowledgeable on this and brought forward some, it's not just about, the dollar amounts that go towards these different aspects, but are they grants? Are they loans? Are they forgivable? What's the time frame for that? Because some of those aspects, the administrative components of the SHIP dollars and how they're put out through the different programs become hindrances or obstacles for the people that want to actually participate in it. It's when it's a straight up grant for emergency repairs, that opens up a whole new category of folks that will come after those dollars. When it's, it's got to be forgiven over so many years. Strategies like that, sometimes they throw up roadblocks for the people that really need these dollars. I also think that what we're doing with the disaster repair aspect of this is a newer approach, that we're trying to really take people that are impacted by either older homes or natural disasters or emergencies that come up, and really creating clear pathways for them to resolve those issues.
One reason I quiz you about Guardian is the further things get away from Winter Haven, the more concern I get. They're probably a very good functioning company, but they're not here where we can really, where you can keep an eye on them and we can, you know what I mean? They're getting further and further out, and I like stuff to be in here.
Yes,
As
sir.
long as you're comfortable with them and
What-
they do what you're contracting them to do.
Yes, sir. And there is not only, I'll just say this, that finding consultants in this particular field is a little bit difficult.
Challenge. Okay.
It's very challenging, especially because of the funds that the city receives. When you're looking at $500,000 a year, basically, it's just that consultants sometimes charge a lot of money, and that then we're getting away from helping, again, the people that the program is designed to help. So, I mean, we had someone local, I think is what we need to consider, is the fact that we had someone local right over in Lakeland for a number of years, but we still have over $1 million on the books. So we can evaluate their progress, their performance as we go. And if they don't, perform in the manner that we like them to, we can always get out of the contract
Okay.
and hire someone else.
I'm sold. Thank you.
Thank you.
How much did you say, how much of the money is going to be in rehab?
Per unit, so we're
No,
not,
no, total. You split you say it's roughly $1.6 million.
Yes, sir.
Going to be spent. So I'm just asking the category, so much in down payment assistance. You gave those numbers, but I didn't.
so what I said was, for a Guardian, we would anticipate on them expending $500,000 over the next year. And
Okay.
then in-house, we would anticipate on expending around 300,000.
Okay,
And that still leaves some money on the books, but those are just estimates.
okay,
Um,
okay.
With the announcement of the funding availability that went out last week,
Mhm.
even though we said that the program doesn't start until, our applications doesn't start until September 2nd, we've had multiple calls already. And we anticipate, this was the thought process, was to have the funding availability to announce, because we're required by SHIP regulations to have it announced for 30 days. So we were anticipating on having a consultant on board prior to the opening of the applications, which start September 2nd. Then that way I can just filter those applications over to the consultant, the ones that would be like for rehab or down payment assistance.
Okay.
And hands is still there. Since, the board is comfortable with a local contractor, they're still there. So they are not precluded. SHIP does not preclude us from hiring more than one contractor. It's just that I don't see the need in hiring someone that has not performed. Those are just my thoughts.
Yeah. Anybody else? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. No, great discussion. I'm glad Diane was here to go to answer those questions. 10G is the declaration of covenants for Lake Conine project. This is Mayor Pro Tem Birdsong. This is the Lake
That's the one
Conine
that I
Park.
was-
So this is one of our final requirements there is a declaration of covenants, conditions and restrictions on two properties where we have pipes that go through there and divert flow from Lake Conine into these wetland treatment cells. So the declaration just prohibits any alterations to those properties that would impact the wetlands associated with the restoration project.
I was asking about the field.
Right.
So
Yep, the fill is still there and still surcharging.
I'm saying how much longer we got?
Initially, we were thinking November, December, late last week, the testing company took some readings and it looks like it might be a little earlier. So maybe
Oh, great.
early October. So a little bit more to come. We should know more early next month, but hopefully a little bit earlier than we thought.
Okay, that's good. All right.
The next item pertains to the Avenue K Complete Street Project. This is for project management support with Carter K Engineering. Again, when we're dealing with DOT projects, there's a tremendous amount of on-site work that has to be done to support those grants, record management, recording meetings, interactions as required by DOT. We're recommending that we retain Carter K to bill us on hours worked per week with a not to exceed amount of $138,240 for that project. And that project is underway with some road closures already occurring there. South Lake Howard West Pedestrian Grants. So this is the Congressman Soto U.S. Congress Community Grant Project funding request that we had submitted. The city was awarded $750,000 for this portion of the project that will go from 15th Street out to Avenue C Southwest, which is on the western side of South Lake Howard Nature Park. It is managed through the Department of Housing and Urban Development. We anticipate this is going to take about 1 to 2 years for design and construction of the area. There is a grant agreement with HUD that needs to be executed. And this recommendation is to allow the city manager to authorize or to execute the grant agreement and take any actions necessary related thereto. You can see on the screen, there's actually 2 trail or sidewalk pedestrian facility enhancement programs there. And I'm sure Brittany Hart would be happy to speak to either of these. The one to the right, as you can see, is an FDOT grant program. That is coming from the kind of northeast side of the canal bridge from from May to Howard, back to 15th Street, and then picking up at 15th Street and going all the way back to Lake Howard Nature Park is the congressional appropriation. And Mr. Mayor, that was the sidewalk project that came up earlier.
Just looking at this map. So the green, we've already got funded and we're putting it out to bid, and the yellow is funded, but you're saying 2 years more.
Right. It still has to be designed and constructed.
Is the intention to put the sidewalk on the lake side or on the non-lake side of the road? Do we know?
So I think once we work through the grant requirements and we're ready to start design, we're gonna have to see how much right of way there actually is on the lake side in order to continue to put sidewalk on that side.
We've looked at that before, Mayor, and we have some issues on that portion of Lake Howard.
Yeah.
In terms of the amount of right of way that we can actually determine is actually right of way, given the old nature of the plat and some of the various configurations.
Did you say if we put a sidewalk there, is that even in question or?
No, sir, that's not in question. It's determination of how much right of way we have on the lake side will determine if we're able to put the sidewalk on the lake side or if we have to put it on the opposite
Okay,
side.
all right.
Brittany, where is it on the DOT portion? Do you know? It's on the lake side.
It's on the lake side on the
portion
DOT portion, yes, sir.
to 15th Street.
Well, clearly, we're not going to have it when we hit where all those houses are built on the lake. We're going to have to be on the other side of the lake of that, right?
The nice thing about that section is up until you get to South Lake Howard Nature Park, there are no homes on the lake there. So from 15th Street back to the parking lot of Lake Howard Nature Park, I think there's maybe 1 or 2 homes that are lakeside of the road. They're all on the upland side of the road.
I guess there's docks there or something.
Yeah.
There's quite a few docks on the lake side at that
And
point.
utilities.
That's the area that we have.
Utility.
Yeah, there's questions
There's
that we're working
questions as to
through
the-
with the attorney's office as to how much right of way is actually there to help us determine if we're able to put sidewalks on the lake side for that church project.
Okay.
Resolutions, you have a final plat approval for Peach Crossing subdivision. So if you're familiar with Pollard Road at Eloise Loop, this is going to be the southwest corner of that intersection, immediately across the street from the storage units that are there, you can see. The 2341 is a request from Four Star to release the performance bond. This is for the first portion of the Harmony project, 61 plus or minus acres, containing 146 building lots and 13 common lots. So they had issued or submitted a bond, performance bond, for $914,000 to guarantee completion of their infrastructure, which has been inspected by staff and found to be complete.
T, let me stop for just a minute, and this is directed more towards Eric, but it may not be a bad idea for us to get a full overview of what's going to happen out there with Harmony, you know, from a top-down point of view, because there's so much changed out there. Whenever you get your ducks in a row and maybe take 15 minutes or 10 minutes and give us just an overview of what all it's going to look like out there.
Sure, and at your discretion or city manager's discretion, I can give that at a future agenda review workshop or however you want to.
Yeah, but I mean, it doesn't matter to me. 10 or 15 minutes is probably all it take, but maybe not. I don't know, but
we can work to do that before your August and at the next agenda review session.
Okay.
Eric, if you'll make note of that.
Yep.
Acceptance of warranty deeds for the Lake Elbert Trail lands. So we have been working, Andy, again, a great job to him and the folks with Florida Appraisal and Acquisition, had to acquire the various lands through donation, voluntary sale from the various owners out there. This resolution affirmatively accepts those conveyances by warranty deeds for the lands necessary for the project. Next would be conservation easement with Swift Mud for Lake Conine. So again, another piece of the Lake Conine Park project. This is actually establishing a conservation easement over the lands there. It covers the wetland cells and allows for the creation of the planned recreational components along that northern area. So again, just another formality in closing out our Swift Mud agreement. And then DOT grant, Eric Menger is here with the airport. This is with respect to the tower project. So that project has an estimated expense of 1.23 million. DOT had provided the city with an initial grant of $500,000, and the remaining $730,000 for the project is now being offered by FDOT in the form of a grant amendment. Again, this project will be 100% covered by FDOT and expected to be operational in fall of 2024. I'm going to ask Eric to give just a quick update on the ordinance 2337. This is dealing with the old Todd Hunter, Florida Caribbean Distillers property off of MLK Boulevard.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. So this project should be somewhat familiar to you. It actually started several years ago with some visioning work that the city out of our office had done with respect to this project in order to help encourage some redevelopment in the Florence Villa CRA district. And so with respect to this property, it's the old Caribbean Distillers property. There are a number of existing warehouses on this property. The ownership, the property did sell. The petitioner, who is Tim Campbell for the owners, is now bringing forward a zoning change to change the zoning from light industrial I-1 to planned unit development to facilitate the redevelopment of this property. They did have some delays in negotiating some easements with Duke that had to occur across a portion of this property. They got through that, and so now they're ready to move forward with their zoning and redevelopment of this property. The The petitioner looks to redevelop the subject property with a mixture of multifamily residential and commercial uses while maintaining the older industrial buildings with some warehousing uses on an interim basis. And so what's before you is the PUD zoning requirement. You can see the residential densities that are allowed according to the primary activity future land use district. It is a table that allows for the mix of uses. So if you do residential at a density somewhere between 4 and 25 units to the acre, you can develop the remainder of the property with commercial up to 786,000 square feet. Or if you develop with a more intense residential use, you're limited to 688,000 square feet approximately of commercial, kind of a sliding scale that we have built into our comprehensive plan for these types of mixed uses. Access to the property will be from existing connections. You can see from the aerial that the right of ways for 3rd Street, Avenue U and Avenue V dead end into this property. Additionally, we've written a requirement that they must access at least have three different access points from this property out to into Motor Pool Road or one of these other connections so that we can disperse traffic appropriately from this site. They are required to install sidewalks. They are allowed to do townhomes and any uses that are allowed within the C3 zoning district, with the exception of automobile uses, garages. I got it written down here somewhere. Automobile servicing, boat and recreational vehicle sales, nursery, cemetery, or standalone parking lot. So we removed some of the more intense C3 uses within that district. There's an interesting condition that the Planning Commission placed on this to allow the legacy warehousing to continue for a period of time. The legacy warehousing can continue while they redevelop the rest of the property. But if it becomes vacant for a period of greater than 36 months, or if a structure is destroyed beyond 50% of its fair market value, the legacy warehousing must cease and they must redevelop into one of the permitted uses unless evidence of a lease that was in existence prior to the effective date of this ordinance or any subsequent renewal by the same tenant is presented. Most leases, as you are probably familiar, have a clause in which the owner must rebuild a structure if the structure is destroyed. And so we wanted to make sure we were addressing that within our PUD ordinance. It is in compliance with section 14 of chapter 2023-304 laws of Florida. That is what's referred to as the House bill that restricts us from making local changes. And staff does recommend approval of this zoning change and it to the City Commission.
Brian, go ahead.
How long after the housing is complete do they have to convert the commercial to its next use?
They are allowed to use the legacy warehousing indefinitely unless it becomes vacant for a period of 36 months. If it becomes vacant for 36 months, that use has to cease. Now, they do intend to develop from the greenfield portion of the property first and then move south. And then as market conditions allow them, they will be transitioning the warehousing into the permitted uses. But there is no specific time frame on when that would occur.
And we don't really have a specific use of what they're going to use the warehouses for once they go to that next phase.
Could be any multifamily residential or any of the uses within C3 that unless it was one of those prohibited uses that I read off.
Is it completely unheard of to have a rule in our zoning to say, if you're going to a PUD, then you need to present a proposed plan of what that looks like. So this is where the houses are going. This is where this is going. Because a lot, I get nervous. We're gonna approve the PUD and I get that there's rules set forth, but you still don't know what you're approving.
So that it's not unheard of, no. And we have requested the applicant to bring some visuals to the city commission meeting if they have them prepared. But the nature of a PUD and the language in our land development code doesn't require them to submit a binding plan. And if the conditions of the zoning district can be met via text, which is in this case, primarily it's via text, that's okay. And so,
And not that this property would do it, but I know that we've done approved things up here that we were shown one picture and that's not
So-
what was built.
so that,
I think we really need to look at that. I mean, if we're gonna approve this and we're gonna approve zoning changes, it'd be nice to say, okay, this is the box that you presented. This is what you're held to. If you want to change it, then you can make another request. But right now, it's just, okay, we'll approve it and there's no standard that we're holding them to other than, what the rules within
right.
a PUD
Well,
require.
and I certainly understand your concern. I think that,
And not disparaging anything on
Sure.
this project. I'm just,
yeah, I think that's part of the interesting dilemma around PUDs. Because on the flip side, there are some PUDs where they have a binding site plan, right? And they want to change a driveway cut by a few feet, or they want to change something very minor. They have to come all the way back through the process, a 6-month process to make that change. And so there's kind of a give and take in these where, you want to know what you're getting. I certainly understand that, but you want to be able to accommodate for some minor changes, in that, some flexibility in that as well. That's fair to the developer too. So
well, maybe that's something that we could look at.
Sure.
To have that flexibility, but then also have something, that holds the developer accountable as well. Just a thought. If anybody else agrees, but
I concur. And what gives me pause for concern on this is I want to see what they're going to do with those warehouses. I just feel like we need to have some sort of improvement plan to paint, spackle, something, make them look pretty, fix up the parking lot, put in some landscaping. And
we do
I
have,
don't want to push away the housing development, but my goodness, we got to do something up on Martin Luther King to make this thing. I know they don't want to, I know the warehouses are the money makers right now, but we got to somehow get something in place.
Yep.
And we don't.
And we do have all the requirements for the landscaping and buffering requirements from Martin Luther King and Motor Pool Road and the Chain of Lakes Trail. And we're requiring a pedestrian connection to the Chain of Lakes Trail, and all of that. Ultimately, the plan is for those warehouses to go away, with perhaps the exception of the front one that has the interesting facade. They've got a concept where they may redevelop that into sort of a joinery kind of food house kind of a thing. Food hall kind of a thing.
You've seen some drawings, right? Of what they're going to do with those warehouses potentially.
I've seen concepts that the city has done that they are working from those concepts to come up with their own plans.
Well, Eric, currently they are doing something there. I mean,
That was
there's activity going on there now.
those are the Tico poles, or the Duke poles.
Oh, okay.
That are being installed across the property. Yes, sir.
I just like to see those things improved and look prettier. That's all.
Yeah, ultimately, the plan is for them to go away, to be torn down.
Well, that'll be a long time. But maybe not. Maybe the man will be so great. They can,
One good storm.
huh? Yeah, it's a nice big hurricane. Don't want that though.
No, don't want that.
Okay, I'm good. What else you got?
Last item, Mayor and Commissioners, is a administrative request to amend a section of the code that deals with our streets, sidewalks, and other places. So this chapter 15 that has our current roadway classifications dates back to 1959 and has not been updated to reflect new travel patterns, which obviously have changed quite a bit. So this request also revises the road classifications and adds the streets and classifications to chapter 21 of section 21-122. So It puts the classifications, the same chapter as the city zoning districts. It updates the street and roadway list to add new roads, which are either new or have been annexed into the city over the years. And it changes the classifications of certain roads and streets in which the character has clearly changed since 1959. This does comply with Chapter 2023-304 of the laws of Florida, which is, Mr. Labby had noted, that is what came out of Senate Bill 250, which precludes us from making changes due until October of 2024. This roadway amendment, we're in compliance with that, even though it is an administrative request. So cleaning up some language that is long overdue within our code.
Okay, questions, anybody else? Anybody, staff, y'all got anything else before we knock off?
Just a reminder that several of you, all of us will be away, some beginning tomorrow, some later in the week at the Florida League of Cities Annual Conference in Orlando. I think Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem travel tomorrow for that, or later tonight, maybe. Commissioner Yates, Commissioner Mercer, perhaps on Thursday. I will be there beginning Thursday, and because MJ is at a Brownfields conference, Charlie Bird will handle operations in my absence on Thursday and Friday here, should there be something that needs an immediate response.
Okey doke. Anybody else? All right, we'll see you Monday night. We're adjourned.
Sir.